Hey, what's up guys? JB here. So we're continuing the coverage of Nier Automata today. We're going to take a quick look at the legacy units for this collaboration. If you didn't build them up initially, are they going to be worth your resources to invest into for 2024? As we know, these were some of the final 80 cost gacha units to be released in the game, and for a time they were some of the best 80 cost units, until we did transition into that 90 cost era a couple of years ago. Now we know that 9S is that free initial get unit from this collaboration, but it will require quite a few shards to build him up. 2B, on the other hand, she is going to cost Visior in order to pull and build her up, but she's at least not going to be at that 100 cost pull rate. Of course, it's been a couple of years now since these units were initially released, so how are they actually holding up in this modern state of the game? And did Gumi give them good enough upgrades to keep them competitive today? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about, so let's get started. So first and foremost, let's talk about these units' base and innate stats and kind of see where they stack up today. Now, in terms of statistics, that is not something that's traditionally been power crept all that hard in the game. Stats have definitely gone up to be sure, but it really has been very moderate compared to other pieces of the game. So with that in mind, I do expect both of these units to hold up relatively well to modern units. The one caveat there is that both of these units are just 80 cost, so they're not necessarily going to be stacking up to the latest and greatest 100 cost units statistically. So starting it off here with 2B, she is an evasion archetype unit, and I am happy to report that, at least in that department, her stats do hold up very nicely. She was, of course, one of the most evasive units released in her day, and as of now, she still is. She is sitting at a raw 82% evasion rate right out of the box, and that's due to a particularly strong luck value that she has in both the base and innate values. And in my view, anything above that 80% raw evasion rates, that's going to have you, amongst the top tier of evade units in the game. It's really only a few points off of some of the newest ones we've seen, like a Lucio or Yuffie. So if you do build this unit right, she's going to be incredibly hard to hit out there in battle. Now, other highlights here for 2B, she has a very strong base attack value at 417. At the time of her release, that was actually one of the best, if not the best, up to that point. And to this point, it's still among the top 20 base attack values in the game. So, the damage potential, is certainly looking like it should be there as well. I think the biggest downfall statistically for this unit is that hit point value coming in at a sub 3000 base value. It's really not where you want it to be, especially when her board really doesn't get her that much either. She's only picking up about another 300 there, so she is on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to her hit points. And basically what that means is that she's going to be firmly in that one-shot range for many of the top damage dealers out there, assuming that they are able to actually get a hold of her and actually hit her. And that's going to be particularly true for the pierce damage type, as you can see there on the left. That is her biggest weakness. She's coming in at a negative 15 value when it comes to pierce, so she's definitely going to have to be careful of those units out there. Now, in terms of some of the upgrades that 2B received, she did get a Mastery 2 as well as a Dream ability. For that Mastery 2, they are giving her 20% slash res penetration. Slash res pen was definitely always one of her weak points. She didn't have any innately, and in fact that was actually a limited bestowed that she got on her vision card, which did actually help her out quite a bit in that department. So that's definitely a big upgrade there. She's also going to be picking up a bit of survivability here on top of that. She is getting a 20% conditional area resistance, and that's dependent on her hit point value. Assuming she is above 50% HP, she's going to have that defensive stat there for her. Now, I would have liked to have seen maybe a skill upgrade here as well, kind of considering the age of this unit being a couple years old now. But overall, I think it's still a pretty nice MA2. Now, for the Dream ability at level 140, she is going to be getting 15 initial AP. AP management was definitely always a weak point for this unit as well. She would often run out, very early on in the battle. So definitely good on the dev team for recognizing that and ensuring that up here. Now, in addition to that, she is picking up 30% reaction block here. I think that one's fine, nothing amazing. But lastly, she is getting an upgrade to her Job 25 ability. It's called Shockwave Plus, and we're going to look at that here in the next slide in a moment. Now, being completely real here, I don't think that this Dream ability in particularly is all that powerful. I do think it's on the weaker end of the spectrum, amongst all of the 140 upgrades in the game. The reaction block, although I do kind of like it, I think that maybe there could have been something a little bit more impactful for that. Even if it had been a 50% reaction block, I would have liked this one a bit more. Now, moving on to 9S, this unit has always specialized in being a physical bruiser with some supportive buffs that he can bring to the team. Statistically, he was really never exceptional even back on his release, and you can see that that continues to be the case today. You know, those stats have only continued to trend just a little bit upwards, and that overall has made 9S look even just a little bit worse overall statistically here. Probably the most power crept stat in the game has been HP since these units came out, and you could see, you know, as a physical bruiser, you would like to see 9S's HP just be a bit more. Overall, though, I don't think that any one of these stats is completely unsalvageable in a complete build. I think, you know, he's going to be more or less fine, just nothing exceptional. Now, in terms of the upgrades that he received here for the Mastery 2 and Dream ability, for that Mastery 2, right off the bat, he's picking up 20 defense pen. That was a huge need for this unit. Again, you know, similar to what we saw with 2B, he didn't have any defense pen innately, so shoring up those penetration values does help him be a little bit more competitive with the modern game state. Personally, I do wish that that had been like a 30 or a 40 just to kind of make him a little bit more in line with what we see today, but he does have some other ways in terms of his active abilities to get a little bit more defense penetration, so I don't think it's the end of the world there. One of the primary sources of 9S's survivability back in the day was an incredibly high defense stat. You can see there on the left, he does come with 22 right out of the box. As we know, defense isn't quite as valuable as it once was, so I do particularly like this upgrade here to kind of augment that defense value and kind of increase his overall survivability, kind of bring him in line with some other modern units, just a little bit closer anyway. Now, if you do bring 9S up to level 140, he is going to be picking up 10% agility here. 9S currently in global, if you were to look at him today, you know, prior to the upgrade, he is going to be below average when it comes to his agility, unless you specifically bring in his agility passive, which he has one for 12% additional. So I think this is a welcome upgrade as well. It does give you some flexibility, you know, if you didn't want to use that particular passive, now you have the option to do that and still be, you know, relatively competitive in the turn order. Or you can opt to use the passive and, you know, make him an above average unit in terms of speed. You can see here on the graphic that it does get him up to 71 agility out of the box, which is, you know, it's actually quite good. Now, on top of that, he is picking up 15 area resistance as well. That's something that he didn't have any of innately, so that does fit into that bruiser role for him specifically, and it does make him just a bit more survivable. Most of the modern units, they are coming innately with some of these impenetrable resistances, and area resist in particular is one of the more sought-after defensive stats, so I do like this one for him. I think it's actually pretty good. So I think overall, you know, a thumbs up for both of these upgrades. Are they the best that we've seen? No, definitely not, but I think that they do kind of fit into what some of the things that these units both needed, and I think they bring them a little bit closer to the modern game state. Now, as we mentioned there are some skill upgrades that did occur for these units, so we're going to be taking a look at those ones here. I have also highlighted a couple of buffs here in particular for both units that I think do still have some relevance for them even today. I think both of these units, they're going to be good TMR buff candidates, to be honest with you. I don't think that any of their innate buffs are really all that powerful for, you know, what we're used to with modern units. So that does give them a little bit of flexibility that maybe you can pull in a TMR, like a haste, you know, like some other supportive party buff that may be more applicable to the battle that you have at hand. Now, starting with 2B, her Job 25 Shockwave Plus, it did get upgraded. It's gone from a 25% chance to slow up to a 50% chance to slow. So that may be a reason you might consider running 2B at a high faith value. Since she is an evasion unit, you know, you really are kind of banking on the fact that if you do get hit, you're probably going to lose that battle. So you might want to take that gamble and run her at that higher faith, increase your chance to actually land this ailment. She does actually have a confusion attack in her skill as well, which, you know, you might be able to lean into there too. Now, slow in particular, it can be very impactful, especially if she is able to line this up on multiple units. This is an AoE attack. I do feel overall that this upgrade here is just a little bit mid. I think they could have done a little bit more here, you know, maybe added a secondary effect onto this attack, or perhaps maybe even extended the range or added a larger area of effect here. I don't think that either of those would have been out of the question, you know, particularly for what we're seeing with modern units out there. Now, both of these units are getting their limit bursts upgraded on top of that. As you can see here, the bolded effects that I've highlighted here for 2B are what's being added in. The cost of the skill has been lessened considerably. It's gone from a 43 AP cost down to just 28. So again, that's going to be helping her out a little bit in that AP management department. So when 2B uses her limit burst, she's going to be getting that slash res pen of 30%. That's was something that was already there. That is going to remain. We are going to be adding some additional effects here. We're going to be adding in a courage effect, 50% additional reaction block, 33% reduced AP consumption, but most importantly, she is going to be nullifying sure hits. So guaranteed hits are no longer going to be able to hit her for 3 turns unless they pass that accuracy check. So overall, I think this is an exceptional limit burst upgrade. Not only is it helping her out with several areas that she is weak in, in terms of that AP consumption and also that reaction block area, I think this is also giving her some layered survivability. You do have that courage effect if she does get hit, but then you also have that null sure hit as well, which does protect her against, some of the sure hit attacks that are out there. So while I was a bit so-so on that skill upgrade, I do really like this limit burst upgrade here for 2B. So moving on to 9S now, he got an upgrade to his party buff, which is called Shield Deployment Plus. This one's going to be adding one additional effect here, which it's actually a new mechanic, but very similar to one that we've just seen with Dagger from Final Fantasy IX. He's going to be adding a debuff component innately to your attacks that will block your opponent's ability to remove the Protect status. Now this buff itself does also give 9S himself that Protect, so that's definitely a nice added bonus for his survivability. Gives him another 25% survivability that, to be honest, has been relatively easy to remove, in the game lately. So that definitely fits right into that physical bruiser niche for 9S that we've been talking about so far. And you can think about, maybe pairing him with other units that might bring that protect status. One that immediately comes to mind might be Charlotte, within his own element. She does have that enhanced version of protect for that 40% component. Not being able to remove that from her would make her incredibly tanky. So could be an interesting combination, but certainly there are other units out there as well. I do think that overall they were a bit light-handed here with this upgrade. When you look at the buff, 15 defense and 15 spirit, it's definitely not what it used to be. You kind of look at it compared to recent buffs and you do laugh, I think just a little bit. So I think they could have even made that, 25 defense and spirit, for example. They could have maybe thrown a shell component in here on this buff for 9S. And I don't think anyone would have blinked an eye at that. I don't think it would have been super powerful. So I just think this one's just a little bit underwhelming overall, even despite it bringing, a new mechanic and a new capability for the game. Now moving on now to 9S's Limit Burst. First and foremost, they have enhanced the range on this one by 1. And they have once again dropped the AP cost here by 15, bringing it down to just 28. Now the bolded effects here once again are what is being added in. He's still going to pick up that 40 defense penetration buff like he always had, but now it is adding in a pre-damage in peril here for 30 unit resist, which is quite strong. He is also going to get a 3-hit 50% physical barrier and a 10% AP auto restore. So again, I'm a pretty big fan of what they've done here. This does give him a nice damage option, adding in that pre-damage in peril, and a way to sort of propel him forward in the fight and maybe turn the tide, giving him that additional AP as well as that additional survivability there with the barrier. Now, one major change for the game that has come in, since these units were first released is the implementation of the job-based vision cards. So there are more rainbow compositions being made and used out there, in addition to those mono-element parties that we have been used to for some time. Now 2B, she is going to be part of that Katana weapon group. As you can see here in the graphic, 13 cards have so far been issued for them. So I think overall it's in pretty decent shape, card-wise. From a unit perspective, I think that is where it is a little bit on the weaker side, although it does have a couple of good ones, frankly, with Sephiroth and Astrius. I have to admit, though, that neither of those units are on the top of their game, so I think that this unit is sort of just waiting for that next big thing, that next big unit to come through. This group also is really lacking for any sort of tank within it, so that's something that you do need to go outside of the group for. This group does actually pair very nicely with the Sword A Red Mage group. You can see there that is one of their key partners, sharing a whopping 7 cards there between the two groups. They do pair together very, very nicely. Now, where exactly does 2B fit into that picture, if at all? The one issue I see for her, at least in terms of, multi-element job parties here, is that I do honestly believe that she does need to be, a fully evasive unit in order to be effective in today's game. And none of these cards here really help her out in that department whatsoever. There is no luck cards here. There is no evasion cards here either. Now, there are a couple of other evade-capable units on this list. Neither of them are top tier by any means, but we do have Laswell and we do have Rob Horn. But, at least from a modern game standpoint, I would say they're probably in an even worse position than what 2B is going to be. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that 2B really doesn't fit into this picture, at least for right now. So I think that's really going to keep her limited towards, mono element win parties. All is not lost there, though. There is some speculation that the next Katana unit is going to be coming in the not so distant future, and there is speculation that it will be an evasive unit as well. So perhaps when and if that unit does come along, and if they do come packaged with a strong vision card that maybe has some evasion and some luck built into it, then perhaps that outlook for her within this Katana group could improve. Of course, we don't know when or if that's going to happen, but there at least is some hopium there, in regards to this unit. Now, moving on to 9S, of course, he's going to be part of that spear weapon group. From a multi-element standpoint, I do believe that 9S is coming into a much better position here. The spear group has been very well developed so far. It's kind of keeping pace with what Katana has there for cards. We do have 12 cards here. The difference for 9S is I think that the cards actually fit his role much better than what we saw there with 2B. You have cards here that can very well, facilitate bruising. You have area resist, you have unit resist, various damage type resistances here as well. Where this group is really setting itself apart, especially in comparison to the Katana group, is from the pure breadth of units that's available here. You have a wide variety. It is one of the biggest, in terms of units in the game. It has an excellent tank there in Dialdo. It has some primo damage dealers when you look at Eld, when you look at Glaciella. Is 9S going to be blowing anybody's doors down? No, I wouldn't say that, not even close, to be honest. But I think if you use him for what he's meant to be used for, which is, kind of filling that physical bruising niche, particularly if you put him up as kind of an anti-pierce unit, he does have very strong base pierce resistance. And I think that he can shine in that scenario, and, maybe is something that does give him a little bit of a niche here in the game. All right, guys, so here's just some overall pros and cons that I have put together for each of these units. I'm not going to talk about each and every point here. I think we did actually touch on a lot of these as we were kind of going through the various points, but do feel free to pause it and take a closer look at it, if you want to. I'm just going to wrap this up here and give you my overall take and an opinion. Are these units actually worth the resources for you to invest into them? For 2B, I think that she still remains a competitive evade unit, strictly for that mono wins team, as I was mentioning, but, maybe with some future job potential there, depending on what happens here over the course of 2024. I think they did an okay job with the upgrades, but nothing special, probably just adequate for an 80 cost unit. If you did have this unit from before and it had built her up previously, I think that she is worth awakening to 140. Without question, that's not going to be much of a resource spend for you at that point. And, I think that, you can potentially still find a place in the game for her. Evasion has remained a staple and relevant in the meta to this day, and I think the upgraded 2B can fit right into that picture. On the other hand, if you didn't have her from before, is she going to be worth the investment of pulling her and then building her up? For funsies, 100%, go wild, get your favorite character. From a meta standpoint, absolutely not. You're not going to get the same return on investment for that 30 to 40k Visior as if you were kind of investing that into one of the latest and greatest units that is newly released. So from that standpoint, I definitely cannot recommend. Now, in regards to 9S, I think that he got some modest upgrades, nothing exceptional, but he had a couple of good things in there. I do really like that limit burst in particular. Like I said, though, he is coming into a much better position in terms of his job class, so I think that he's, better poised to make more of an immediate impact, especially when you look at cost-limited type situations. And in particular, if you are looking to maybe build an anti-pierce team, as we mentioned, I think he is capable of reaching some very nice pierce resistance. Now, 9S, is he going to be worth awakening to 140 if you did have him before? Again, I would say absolutely. He does have a specific niche that I think he can have a little bit of success with and hold his own within that environment. If you are coming in brand new to this collab, or maybe you are a newer player to the game, is he going to be worth that full investment for you? I'm actually going to give you my thumbs up there as well, and that's purely on the back of him being a free initial get unit, probably with access to some shards within the event as well. So at the end of the day, that's going to be a significantly less investment for you to get this unit online, and I think that he still holds some value in that PvP game, although it is very niche, but I think that he shines even more within the PvE environment, and that's a niche that frankly 2B really doesn't have, at least as strong as what 9S does, because 9S has continued to be a contributor and valuable within the Lightning PvE events. So if that's something that interests you, he does have that going for him as well. So that's a wrap, guys. Those are my thoughts today on 2B and 9S. If you are wondering about 2B's vision card from the event, here's the real 10-second TLDR. It's still good. Get the card if you're grabbing 2B 100%. Get the card if you are a win player and you like to play that element in particular. Outside of that, I think you can let it go. Now, I haven't done one of these Are These Units Still Worth It guides in a little while, so I do hope that you guys enjoyed this and hope you got some benefit out of it. Definitely let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button for me. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.